Welcome into Triple Zeros, the anti-hot take sports show. I am your host, Josh Buckhalter. Be sure to follow me on Twitter at JoshGBuck. Hit the Facebook page, Clocker Sports. Website is clockersports.com, and the email address is contact@clockersports.com. And of course, you can follow the show on Facebook, Twitter, and X/Instagram at Clocker Sports. We got a lot to get into. Of course, I'm joining you right in the wake of the Chicago Bears season opening loss to the Green Bay Packers, a 38-20 debacle, and we're gonna break some of that stuff down, talk about where I kind of stand after what I've seen this off-season, training camp, preseason, and then in week one and where I'm at with the team going forward. Obviously, it's week one, so you don't want to overreact, and this is the anti-hot take sports show, so we're not going to go too far over the edge either way, but we're going to try to find the middle line here and talk about some of the stuff that we did see. Also, as usual, we're going to touch on some other things around the NFL and the NBA as well. So with that said, I think we can I don't want to say safely, right, but we can kind of look back at what we saw with this Bears team and kind of realize that it wasn't anything that they, A, sold us, and then B, I don't think that they necessarily were ready for it to be what it was. And by that, I mean they bought their own hype and maybe a little bit too much. It's okay to believe in yourself, but I think that there was a bit of too much buying in, like I said, buying into your own hype there that kind of led to what we saw, a team that looked like they were outcoached, outclassed in every single facet of the game. And so, like I said, man, we got some clips to get to. I have some audio from Justin Jones. We'll talk about some of the stuff that I heard in the locker room, and then I'll point you to something I'm going to have coming out tomorrow morning as well. But with that said, let's get right into it. Woo! Let's try it one more time. Yeah, we gotta have the volume up if you want things to actually play out loud. That's how that works. I don't know if anybody knows that, but now you know that. So, the Bears, again, like I said, fell 38-20 at home to the Green Bay Packers in what was really one of the saddest showings I've seen, not just in the season opener, period. And I say that because it was 10-6 at halftime. And so that just tells you how things went. The Bears had the total yardage advantage, and they looked like maybe not a new Bears team, but they looked like a team that was not going to let this game end the way it did, and that's out of hand. A lot of the narrative coming out of that is, it's as usual, Justin Fields is not good enough. But you also have plenty of people who are ragging on everybody from the top down, from the coaches to the GM to ownership. That's a common one. The players as well. You can't win games without players playing up to their expectations and up to their standards. And nobody, almost to a man, did that in yesterday's game. So that's one of the things that I think that you kind of have to realize is it might be easy to point to one thing, but when you see what you saw and you give up, 28 second half points, right? That's a complete and utter failure all the way around. That's not just one player, not one person, one position group. That being said, there are some things that stood out in that game that I think are very notable and need to be maybe not necessarily dissected more, but just something that we got to keep filed away for future reference because I think that the Bears are there could very well be a gut check moment very early on here in the season as they try to right the ship. They've already talked about, in the locker room, quite common actually to hear guys saying that, this is one game, not going to let this define us and this, that, and the third, which is all well and good. But the problem with that was, like I said, this entire offseason they had been building up to, it's a new day, it's a new era, it's a new X, Y, and Z. You know what I mean? Because this is what they had been building for. Aaron Rodgers was gone from the Packers. It's supposed to be their time to take the reins, if not in the division, at least in this rivalry. And it showed, and to be honest, it showed that they were not ready yet. And to be honest, I'm not sure that narrative was a valid one to begin with, because for as much consternation as there was about Jordan Love and him taking over first-year starter, also the third 2 starts all in his career before that, even though he was drafted a year before Justin Fields, I think what we forget is most of those pieces were still part of that group that was whooping on the Bears for the past couple of seasons. This is not, and the ownership group is still there. The people who are in that building, there's a certain level of, I don't want to say pride because that would make it seem like I'm saying the Bears players don't have pride in this, but they take it personal in Green Bay and they know how to handle this group. I watched that game and I was kind of surprised at the approach. It was almost like, and I've said this multiple times to people and I've tweeted this out, but it was like they were waiting for a counterpunch or an adjustment from the Packers that just never came. It seemed like they were trying to lull the Packers to sleep with their short passing game and then go up top. But Green Bay was more than happy to make them matriculate their way down the field, which they couldn't do. And then the running game that was so strong last year was pretty much bottled up outside of Justin Fields running. You had the passing game was non-existent, and that's multifaceted too. It's not just offensive line. It's not just Justin Fields. It's not just play calling. It's all three. And if you want to pick a favorite, that's fine. But I am unable to evaluate Fields, in my personal opinion. I'm unable to evaluate Fields because I'm not sure that he has gotten the best protection. I know he hasn't gotten, but the numbers bear that out, that he has not gotten the best protection. On top of that, though, I'm not sure that their Bears are quite sure of how to use him yet. Still, to this point. Remember, it took them to week 7 last year. Justin had to come out and say that he was tired of getting close with the offense and not scoring before they adjusted things around his skill set a little bit closer. That's how you got all the running down the stretch. Now, he was running before that, but kind of kicked it into gear from that point. Now, this offseason, the talk was about his development as a passer. And if you follow me on Twitter at JoshGBuck, you've known that I had said throughout camp that I just hadn't seen enough to say anything either way about his progress that we heard about. He vowed to be the Bears' first 4,000-yard passer this season. And he finished with 200 yards in week 1, right? But a lot of that was garbage time stats against shell defenses that weren't really trying to do anything. When the pressure was on, the line didn't handle it well, and then he didn't always handle it well. And I think it's a big part of what they were doing before. You can say, oh, well, he was clean in this pocket. He didn't throw the ball. He should have thrown the ball here. Shell shock is real, man. And I'm not sure that, at that point in the game, if the flashbacks of last year, whatever the case may be, if he wasn't kind of, reliving bad moments and seeing stuff. Now, we saw that, I believe it was Adam Johns from The Athletic tweeted out stats from True Media that the Fields was pressured on 50-something% of dropbacks, something like that. High pressure rate for Fields. And then the Packers were doing a lot of zone blitzing. And for a running quarterback who is still learning how to read defenses and the field and go through his progressions and all that kind of stuff, making him think longer, makes him take longer in the pocket. He's already got a high release time as it is. You start to see where those breakdowns came from. Now, that doesn't, excuse the O-line for making their mistakes. It doesn't excuse Fields for making the mistakes that he made. Like I said, holding the ball too long sometimes, missing wide open players, because it sounds like hearing him talk, because he did say that the game plan was for shorter passes. Now, we don't know if that meant to set up longer passes or what, but we do know for a fact that the shorter passes were a part of the game plan here, which, again, seems odd with the speed that you've added, the size that you have out in your skill positions now. It just didn't seem to make sense from the get-go. But that being said, that's what their plan was. And so you start to see, okay, well, he's not got to think. And if your routes are all short and they're sitting deep and no one's able to, work their way through because they're in a zone as it is, it was a full level failure on everyone. And it's if I wasn't trying to, find some kind of tangible reason for hope and reasons to doubt both ways, you got to see it both ways here. I would say this is flushable tape, but it's not. You got to pay attention. And then that brings me to the next thing, the tape. While we can talk about Fields, we can talk about the offensive line, we can talk about the defense. One player has been getting a lot of publicity this offseason because of his attitude, because of his perceived attitude. Let me say it more clearly. His perceived attitude and a reputation that's followed him from his previous team, and that's wide receiver Chase Claypool. There are clips of him going around on the internet of him not trying his hardest, it looks like, of him getting bullied by a smaller defender on a block on a screenplay that got blown up, and just overall not giving a full effort. After the game, he was not around in the locker room for comment. He kind of got out of there quick. I saw him, but it was in passing. As we were coming all in there, he was getting all out of there, and it was all kind of, just a big rush. And then before I realized it, I thought about it, and he was gone. People were asking about where's Chain. I was like, oh, you know what? I think he dipped out. So who knows what that is? We saw him kind of have that on-field sideline moment where Fields had to go and calm him down. But they've been raving about him this offseason. He was having a good camp from what I could see before he got injured. And then the preseason, it was just all build-up. All the talk has been the build-up about week 1, about the Packers, about the new day, about the new vibe in the building, about how they got talent now and this feels different. And then they went out there and played like that. So this is not going to be what it's going to sound like. I know people are going to be like, you can't excuse what Claypool did. I'm not excusing what he did at all. But I will say this. If I am, and we know receivers are divas and that's the whole stereotype. But if I was a playmaker and I was talking all offseason about how we were going to tear people up, we're going to bombs away, we're going to air them out, we're about to do this thing, And then we come out with the game plan that they showed against the Packers, the conservative, run the ball, short passing game, screen game, and never getting off of that, despite the fact that it wasn't working. Even if the game was close, it was not working. You were 10-6 because you couldn't punch the ball into the end zone. That was very similar to what we saw with the offense last year before that, up to that Washington game. So I don't condone what Chase may have been loafing. I wouldn't condone that. If that's what was happening. The tape can be subjective, obviously. Didn't look good, I'll tell you that much. But I understand. I understand the playmaker being frustrated with thinking that you're going to be able to do something, that you're going to build on something, that you're going to be this newfangled explosive offense and to come out and look like the same old Bears. Again, so much of this offseason was about different vibes, different feelings, different attitudes, different players for the same result to be the outcome. And I think that that's where the most disappointing part is. It's not that they lost. It's not that they lost to the Packers, because I think that if you took a step back, most people would be able to see, okay, well, the Packers team was far better last year, even only, winning 9 games? They were still far better than the 3-win Bears, more than the record even showed. Switching out a quarterback will change some things, but even still, that at most probably would have made them neck and neck. And let's not forget, while Love is the least experienced in terms of playing time, he does have 4 full seasons now. Well, it'll be his 4th season of this offense. The same offense, and I wrote about this for Clocker Sports. Visit clockersports.com. The same offense that Justin Fields is trying to master. So there's a bit of a learning curve that I think is getting kind of lost here in that, Fields or Love is stepping in for the first time full time this year. But he's been there. He's seen it. He's done it. And he had a very good rollout, not only of how to do it, but how to do it against this team. Right? How he's been privy to the expectations without having to bear that. And now he steps into that role, and the parts around him are established for the most part. They were without their top receivers, but it's 2 young receivers in Dawes and Watson. Watson did not play. Didn't matter. Jaden Reed, rookie, did well, beat Eddie Jackson for a touchdown. Wrote about that too. Eddie Jackson put out a message. And it's very much on par with what was being said around the locker room. You can check the Twitter. Again, follow me on Twitter at Joshua on X. I keep calling it Twitter. That's what I'm going to call it till forever. But I tweeted about Eddie Jackson, tweeted about Khalil Herbert. They both kind of, wrote about Eddie Jackson and tweeted about Khalil Herbert. But they both kind of expressed the disappointment of how tough this loss was. And you can see that it bothered them because they felt like they were ready and they weren't. And Eddie said, not to say that they needed it, but that, it was a punch in the mouth. And now the important part was how they responded. And I think that's key, but it's almost upsetting. Again, they were a very, very confident group coming into the season. I'm sure they're still a very confident group, so I'm not saying that that's gone. But you have to look back like, oh, well, what did we not do that had us so wrong about how confident we were and what we could do? You understand? There was a missing link there, and that, Matt Eberflus was asked today about why things didn't work for the Bears and they worked for the Packers, and why this seems to be the same story, and he didn't really have much to say about it. And I think because he kind of got that drilled down look in his eye, but he went back to we're focused on us, and I think that's smart. But it's not going to go away until you show that who you are. What other than this? If this is what you are, then this is what you're going to get. You're going to get those kind of questions. You're going to get this kind of ridicule, deep, dive analysis and stuff and jokes. You got Falcons reporters tweeting out jokes about how Jordan Love's the new owner of the Packers. You had 3 months. If you didn't win any other game this year, you were supposed to win that game. And that's why I say it's not just on one player. It's not just on one position group. It's not just one coach. It's everybody. Because if nothing else, this was supposed to be your game. And you built it this way. They've set it up to be this way. They built it up to be this way. The league set it up. But they built it up to be like this. They talked about it. And they did not deliver. And it was really kind of sad. And I think that, when you go back and you look at what was happening, you kind of see, okay, they weren't ready. They just weren't ready. And I don't know if there's any other way to put that. And that's why I say if you're going to blame anybody, it has to start at the top. But if you're going to blame the coaches, you got to blame the GM because he hired the coaches. And while I've liked the moves that Poles, Ian Cunningham have made, I've liked what I've heard from Matt Eberflus, the results have not been there. They've been the opposite of what you want to see. And we're starting clocks on players I'm always one who starts clocks on executives and coaches just because I've seen teams turn themselves around from changing ownership. Sometimes, and I want to say it's a lot more common when they change the leadership group and people who are running things more than it is just the players. Because A, you got to get the players to mesh. B, you got to get players to fit. C, you got to get players and still afford all of that. And then D, you got to have the quarterback to make it all come together. There's a lot of moving parts there. The coaches, there's a lot of moving parts too. But we know successful structures often start at the top and then work their way down. It's not the other way around. And so when you keep seeing these things, you keep seeing the same lack of progress, what else are you supposed to attribute it to other than, well, it's a total organizational failure? Even the guys who aren't playing on the field, that's just what it has to be because, again, your entire offseason was built up around being different, being better. You got goals this season, and you were going to beat Packers because it's Packers week, and it's a big rivalry, and it's just one of 17. But it's a big one. It's the big one, and you needed it. And now you got to bank on moving forward. After the game, I talked to defensive tackle Justin Jones. Excuse me, Chris Jones just signed his extension today. That's why he's on the brain. I talked to defensive tackle Justin Jones and asked him just what the message was to the locker room now that they are kind of, stuck, or not stuck, but now that they are behind it. You talked a big game. He was one of the people who talked a big game. So how do you bounce back now? And this is what he had to say.
Man, keep working. We know what we got. We know what we're building here. We know exactly what we got here. So don't let one game ruin that, man. At the end of the day, man, we still got some good guys in the locker room, some good players. And I know we're gonna come back next week and we're gonna ball.
And so there you have Justin Jones, confident that they're going to ball next week. They take on Tampa Bay Buccaneers on the road at Tampa. Then they got to go again on the road to Kansas City to take on the Chiefs. It's not a very comforting scenario if you are a Bears fan, but that is a reality of what they face. And so we'll see how they respond. Jones was not worried about that. I asked him specifically, does it make it more challenging now that you guys have to do this travel? And he was pretty adamant that it does not. And again, this was something that I heard throughout the locker room, but he was one of the people who was pretty clear and pretty assertive that, it doesn't matter necessarily what they have to do. They just have to go do it. And I respect that to the fullest. So here's Chris Jones, or Justin Jones. I keep doing that. Here's Justin Jones again on what the Bears have to do going forward, how much of a bigger challenge it is that they have to go on the road now after this such a loss and trying to regroup.
No, man, we still got a regular routine that we're going to follow, man. Like I said, we're going to put our head down. We're going to keep working, man. We got 16 more games. Like I said, there's a lot of good teams who lost their first game and they still ended up playing in the playoffs and still going for Super Bowl. So I'm not really worried about that. Like I said, it's just one game, man, and we got to bounce back. We got a really good team here, man. I truly believe that.
Confidence. That's what you want to hear from your leaders in your locker room, especially the guys who were talking the big game beforehand. So I tip my hat to I keep wanting to call him Chris Jones. That money that I keep, yeah. Anyway, I wrote about it for Last Word on Pro Football. Go ahead and check that out. Chris Jones agrees to a 1-year contract ending his holdout. But Justin Jones is a leader in that Bears locker room, and that's what you want to hear from your leaders. Steady, right? Head up, chest out. We're gonna push forward. You have to, because if you sit there and dwell on it, it'll start snowballing on you. Now, this is a fiery, feisty Bucs team that's gonna blitz a lot. Justin's gonna have to learn how to deal with these zone blitzing schemes. I think they might play more man than Green Bay will, but it's gonna be a lot of blitzing, and pressure has gotten to the line. It's gonna get to him at some point, so he's got to not get routed by all of that. I say that to say it's a long season, man. I have to agree with them on this. I as much as I would love to flip out, we're going to give them, I'm going to do the old Lovie Smith. You get a quarter of the season. Can you get to the quarter of the season? Where are you after that? If you're 2-2 there, I don't know if we can be too mad at that, because there already be 2/3 of their 2022 win total right then and there through 4 games. So that's where the hope is. That's where the hope has to be. Tomorrow, I should have an article about Roshan Johnson and what he had to say after his strong game, despite having a loss. So we'll have that up for Clocker Sports tomorrow. Around the rest of the league, man, that's what my head keeps turning. I'm sorry, I'm a little bit distracted because I'm watching the Bills and the Jets. Aaron Rodgers went down early in the first quarter. I want to say it was like snap number 2, but it might not have been that soon. And so he's been out for the game, or he's been out. They said his return was questionable, but I don't think he's come back in yet as I've been recording here. So very tough situation if you are the Jets. Again, like I said, man, it was a weird week around the NFL of several upsets. We saw the 49ers stomp the Steelers. That's not really an upset, but the Steelers got absolutely boat raced at home. Just like so. Listen, I get it. Dallas Cowboys blanked the New York Giants 40-0. The Eagles needed a late drive to win. The Seahawks were barely even there. You had the viral clip of Geno Smith going, "Oh my God," when he saw Aaron Donald coming through the line. A wild week, but I will say this, and again, this is the Anti-Hot Take Sports Show. Triple Zeros. Follow us at triplezeros.com. You can follow the show. Triple Zeros on Twitter. This is the Anti-Hot Take Sports Show, man, but this is week 1, so you got to remember that. Let's take everything in stride. For you fantasy folks out there, don't go willy-nilly with the drops and the ads. That was me. I was that guy. Okay, before Triple Zeros, I was that guy. I was the irrational, let me make this move right now. Now, because I do this, I start to think a little bit longer before I make any decisions. And I just would suggest that to everybody making rest of the season prognostications about actual football, making moves with your fantasy team, all of that. Just be ready because it's going to be a very long season. Let's switch gears and talk about some NBA real quick before we get up out of here. LeBron James, in the wake of Team USA's loss to Germany in the FIBA World Cup, Germany went on to beat Serbia in the finals and win gold. USA lost to Canada in the third place game, bronze medal game. My gosh. And so they did not medal for the second tournament in a row. LeBron is supposedly recruiting players and has already gotten some players on board. I believe Jason Tatum, Steph Curry, the likes of those guys are already willing to go. Now, they might have been willing to go anyway. There was a belief that the players were skipping out on the World Cup because they wanted to do the 2024 Olympics in Paris, which makes a lot of sense. And, you know, American NBA players have long deprioritized the FIBA World Cup. So I'm not surprised by any of all of that happening at all. I am surprised by the reaction because there's been some people who are kind of like, whatever. And then you got the Gilbert Arenas guys. And I wrote about this for Heavy.com. Go ahead and check that out on Heavy on Lakers. About Arenas just going in like, man, they done messed up and let Bron get upset. Now Bron's recruiting. They did the Bron coming. It was a very, very entertaining rant. Like I said, read that up on Heavy on Lakers. But I don't know if the FIBA thing will ever come back around because of how it's structured, because of how we've deprioritized. Unless players suddenly have a change of heart and want to compete in that again, I don't see the gap necessarily close or reopening for the U.S. They might win again, but they won't have that gap, that control, that dominance that they had back even when they won back-to-back titles in 2014 and 2010? Something like that. So I wrote about this for Heavy on Bulls. Andre Drummond was talking about how the gap has just closed. There is these teams have gotten better. Steve Kerr said it, head coach of Team USA, has said it. The international teams are better now. And there's a sense of pride when these NBA level players, that's why and we'll talk about the Noah Lyles thing in 1 second. That's how we'll close out with the Noah Lyles stuff. But you got NBA players on these other teams now. Before, those guys were still trying to make it to the league. Those guys were prospects for the league. Some of those guys never came over to the league. Now, these guys are in the league, playing in the league, winning, producing in the league, and then going back overseas to finish out their careers for another 4 or 5 years. Like, this is not even uncommon anymore, right? Nikola Mirotic left in 2018, 2019, something like that. He's been gone for a little bit. He just retired and won MVP but a couple years ago. Like, it's different. It's different. And so now you have this influx of talent. You have lack of desire by Team USA potential participants waiting maybe for the Olympics or whatever reason. It's a perfect storm to have what you have where they're falling out, not medaling at all. And it'll never be as big of a disgrace as it is in the Olympics. If they don't medal in the Olympics, they better not come home. Like, they might need to just stay over there in Paris. But they can come home from the Philippines. Like, people are upset, but we'll move on. It was fun basketball to watch. And then Noah Lyles thing, the whole world champs, NBA champs thing. In conversation, I've always said NBA champs. I might have written world champs every now and again, but I usually refer to them as NBA champs. Now, I will say this about his point. What are they the champs of? How are they champs of the world? They don't play against world competition. That is wholly untrue. Because as I just pointed out, a lot of these FIBA teams have NBA talent on them. Serbia had Bogdan Bogdanovic and Nikola Jovic. Germany has Dennis Schroeder, both the Wagner brothers, and there's a few other guys that I'm blanking right this very moment. But they're a starting five. Daniel Tice, former Bull, on that team. These teams are loaded with NBA talent now, and by loaded I mean your front line. Now they'll never boast the depth that US can send, even with their backup squads. But there's not that same level of will want to. And a lot of these guys have played. When you go back to these foreign teams, they've played with these guys before. It's more of a reigniting that bond, reconnecting, than it is trying to form a connection like Team USA has. And then we get to the stylistic stuff, and I just was not a fan of how Curry deployed the team this time around. Any of it. I just was not a fan of it. So hopefully they can get it all back. But I do say, if they want to say world champs, I don't have a problem with it because it is an international league. It is a global league, even if it's based in America and their games are played mostly in America, in United States. You got to be specific now in this conversation. In the United States and Canada, so I guess North America. It's world because the last 5 MVPs have been won by 3 foreign players. Okay, we just saw a team laden with NBA talent, NBA players, not former, not future, not potential, current NBA players, right? Win the FIFA World Cup. The NBA is an international league. It's a global league. It's a global brand, and you know this. So why are we even debating it? Now, from that point on, if you want to say world champs, go for it. But if you really prefer them to be NBA champs, you're not wrong there either. I just don't understand how we can't understand, right? I don't get how you don't get that a global league, which it is, the top talent comes to the NBA. It's not saying there's not talented players overseas. The top talent comes to the NBA. That is an undeniable fact. If that's from around the world, and that being the case, makes it an international global league. Therefore, when you win, I could say you are the world champ because, damn it, you done beat people from around the world. It's not a country versus country thing. That's cool. Doesn't mean, I just don't see that meaning any less because everybody plays here. It's not just limited to American-born players. Sorry. That's just the way it is. That's going to do it for this episode, 000. Be sure to follow me on Twitter at JoshyBuck. Hit the Facebook page, Clocker Sports, website, clockersports.com. Email address is contact@clockersports.com. And, of course, follow the show on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at 00030pod. That's the number 30pod. And the website, of course, like I said, Clocker Sports. Read the stuff, man. Last word on Bulls, or last word on pro football. Heavy on Bulls, heavy on Lakers, and soaring down south. And, of course, Clocker Sports. And until the very next time, man.